is really effective for energy consumption. But if I find oh geez, Marvin, it's ingratiating. That's Marvin the Martian.
Oh.
I actually got him a little for Halloween, a little knitted Marvin the Martian cap. So he had the little, the helmet with the. It looked super cute.
You got enough, buddy?
So did you always know, business was the way you wanted to kind of attack these problems versus, say, maybe a nonprofit or, working as a college professor or something? I don't know.
Well, when I was in high school, I thought I'd most likely be doing physics at a particle accelerator. So that's what I was. Physics and computers. I mean, I got distinctions in two areas, in physics and computer science, and those were, some of my two best subjects. And then I thought, okay, well, I want to figure out what's the nature of the universe, and so go try to working with people, banging particles together, see what happens, and then it sort of things went along, and the superconducting super collider got canceled in the U.S., and that actually was like, whoa, what if I am working at a collider? It's been all these years, and then the government just cancels it.
Wow.
And then was like, I'm not going to do that. So, it's like, so well, we roll back a little. I was trying to figure out when I was a kid, I had this existential crisis. I don't know, I was about 12 years old or something, and I was like, well, what does the world mean? What's it all about? We're living some meaningless existence. And then I made the mistake of reading Nietzsche and Schopenhauer, and I'm like, whoa, don't do that. Not to be a little older, I think. No, actually, lately, these days, I sort of reread it. So I was like, he's not that bad. He's got issues. No question about it. But it's anyway. But then I read The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, Douglas Adams, which is quite a good book on philosophy, I think. And was like, okay, we don't really know what the answer is, obviously. But the universe is the answer. And really, what are the questions we should be asking to better understand the nature of the universe? And so then, to the degree that we expand the scope and scale of consciousness, then we'll better be able to ask the questions. And understand why we're here or what it's all about. And so we should sort of take the set of actions that are most likely to result in us understanding what questions to ask about the nature of the universe. So therefore we must propagate human civilization on Earth as far into the future as possible, and become a multi-planet species to, again, extend the scope and scale of consciousness and increase the probable lifespan of consciousness, which is going to be, I think, probably a lot of machine consciousness as well in the future. Mm-hmm. And that's the best we can do, basically. And that's the best we can do. So, in thinking about the various problems that we're facing, or what would most likely change the future, when they were in college, there were sort of 5 things that I thought would be. I thought these were actually these. I would not regard this as a profound insight, but rather an obvious one. The internet would fundamentally change humanity, because it's like humanity would become more of a superorganism, because the internet is like a nervous system. Now suddenly, any part of the human organisms anywhere would have access to all the information.
Amazing.
Instantly.
Neuralink.
Hey, well, I can imagine if you didn't have a nervous system, you wouldn't know what's going on. Your fingers wouldn't know what's going on. Your toes wouldn't know what's going on. You'd have to do it by diffusion.
Oh gosh.
And and the way information used to work was really by diffusion. One human would have to call another human.
Or actually go
write
there.
them. Yes, like if it was a letter, you would have to write a letter. You'd have to hand that letter to another human. That would be carried through a bunch of things. Finally, another person would give it to you.
Inefficient.
Extremely slow diffusion. And if you wanted access to books, if you did not have a library, you're no, you don't have it. That's it.
Right.
So now you have access to all the books instantly, and you if you can be in a remote, like, mountaintop jungle location or something, and have access to all of humanity's information if you've got a link to the internet. This is a fundamental, profound change. So that's one thing. I was on the internet early because of in the physics community that was pretty normal, although his interface was almost entirely text and hard to use. But then another one would be obviously making life multiplanetary, making consciousness multiplanetary, changing human genetics, which obviously I'm not doing, by the way. It is a thorny subject, but it is being done with CRISPR and others. It will become normal to I think to change the human genome. It will become normal.
Like, what's the opportunity? Like, why is that something that's inevitable? Or,
well, I think for sure, as far as say getting rid of diseases or propensity to various diseases, then that's gonna be like the first thing that you'd want to edit out. So it's like if you've got like a situation where you're definitely going to die of some kind of cancer at age 55, I prefer to have that edited out.
Yeah, definitely.
So I think so edit that out. There's the Gattaca sort of extreme thing where it's not really edited out, but it's like it's edited in for various enhancements and that kind of thing, which probably will come too. But I'm not saying arguing for or against it. I'm just saying this are more likely to come than not down the road. Yeah. So then AI, really major one.
So these are all big motivational factors, to keep our consciousness going.
Oh, and it's sustainable. Yes, so sustainable energy. So sustainable energy actually was something that I thought was important before the environmental implications became as obvious as they are. It's simply because if you mine and burn hydrocarbons, then you're going to run out of them. Because it's not like mining sort of say metals, for example. If you we recycle steel and aluminum, and because that's just it's not a change of energy state. Whereas if you take fossil fuels, you're taking some from a high energy state, converting it to a lower energy state like CO2, which is extremely stable. So whereas we will never run out of metals, not a problem. We will run out of mined hydrocarbons, and then necessarily, if we've got billions, ultimately trillions of tons of hydrocarbons that were buried deep underground in solid, liquid, gas form, whatever, but they're deep underground. You suddenly move them from deep underground to the oceans and atmosphere, you will have a change in the chemistry of the surface, obviously. And then there's just a certain probability associated with, well, how bad will that be? And the range of possibilities goes from mildly bad to extremely bad. But then why would you run that experiment? That seems like the craziest experiment ever. Especially since we have to go to sustainable energy anyway. Why would you run that experiment? It's just the maddest thing I've ever heard. I'm not saying there shouldn't be some use of hydrocarbons on Earth, but there just should be the correct price placed on CO2 production. And the obvious thing to do is have a carbon tax. It's a no-brainer. I don't know, 90+% of economists would say this, and I think of physicists, and it's just the market system works well if you've got the right price on things. It's very, very simple. And if you've got a price of zero, effectively, or very low, then it's people will behave accordingly. So it's just that's the thing that needs to get done. I think it will get done. And then if over time, as you raise the price on carbon, you can actually, I think, encourage sequestration technologies over time. And there'll be a lot of innovation in that regard. And that's the right way to do it.
So you had these realizations about, areas of big value, and you went and started Zip2, You sold it, got 20 million cash. You were the largest shareholder of PayPal at the time. eBay acquired it. I think you got 160 million or something like that. You have enough money basically for an entire lifetime. Why go and put your money into SpaceX, which is a huge, risky operation, or Tesla? Why not just kind of, relax?
Sure. So yeah, basically, I graduated from Penn with basically physics and economics, and then we actually did a road trip to Stanford with Robin Wren, who was in my physics class, and now works at Tesla actually.
That's cool.
Yeah, and he grew up in Shanghai.
Yeah.
So.
That's cool.
Yeah, he's a very smart guy. He ended up continuing at Stanford, and I ended up going on deferment a couple days into the semester. But I was going to be studying material science and the physics of high energy density capacitors for use in electric vehicles. So the intent was I was going to go, okay, I'm going to work on energy storage solutions for electric vehicles. And I'd worked at a company called Pinnacle Research for a couple summers that did high energy density capacitors. I was going to try to do effectively like a solid state version of what they were doing with it's going to get very complicated from a technical standpoint, but they were using a ruthenium tantalum oxide. Ruthenium is extremely rare and expensive. You cannot scale that. So it's like, can you find a substitute for ruthenium? But we were able to get to energy density is comparable to a lead-acid battery, but with incredibly high power density. So,
what do you want?
I can go down a deep rabbit hole there, but
what's the purpose of a supercapacitor in an EV?
Ultra capacitor.
No, I think with the advent of high-energy lithium-ion batteries, a capacitor is not the right path.
What was your thinking back then, though, that made you think it could be useful for EVs?
I want to use advanced chip-making equipment to make capacitors that were precise at a molecular level. So at the, just a level of precision that was sort of unheard of in capacitors. Like capacitors, energy is a function of its area and a separation distance. So if you can have very tiny separation distance, and you can inhibit quantum tunneling, like I said, how deep things get pretty esoteric. So you got to inhibit quantum tunneling, get a very short gap, and then you could, in theory, get to very high energy densities by making capacitors in the way that you would make an x86 processor. And since there were tens of millions of dollars going into chip making R&D, that I thought there might be a way to make an advanced capacitor using chip making equipment instead of the conventional means.
So is it off the table, ultracapacitor?
It's unnecessary.
Okay.
Interesting.
It's unnecessary. I think it's probably physically possible, but it's unnecessary at this point.
I mean, I know a lot of people were talking about Maxwell, and they'd been working on some stuff with capacitors.
The funny thing is that when I was doing my internships at this advanced capacitor company called Pinnacle Research, which was in Los Gatos, we talked a lot about Maxwell. And Maxwell was also trying to make high energy density capacitors. Now Tesla acquired Maxwell.
Mm-hmm.
So
Full
It's
circle.
amazing.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
Wow.
we're looking forward to that investor day.
Yeah.
it's kind of a big deal.
That's great. Great to know.
Maxwell has a bunch of technologies that where if they're applied in the right way, I think can have a very big impact.
Like the dry electrode stuff?
That would be one of them.
Oh,
That's a big deal.
Yeah, for sure.
okay.
Much bigger deal than it may seem. Yeah. And there's a few other things.
With the space that it takes up for the ovens, that for the current technology, you can save all that real estate space now. That's one aspect, and the cost reduction, the weight savings. I mean, there's so many pluses, right?
Yes, I mean there's many things there, but I'll have to wait until whatever battery day,
Sure.
which is hopefully in a few months. But I think we've got some pretty exciting things to share. So
Galley's very excited.
Yeah, it seems like the pace of the innovation of the battery thing has just taken off. Like since you guys have more capital and being able to like have the Gigafactory be vertically integrated, just seems like no other car company's making that many batteries. So they're not even thinking about what comes next. But that
They're not
bet,
even,
you know,
man.
Not even come close at all.
I can 201 miles.
Not even.
That's a joke.
Yeah, no, it's true. The other car companies just really want to outsource battery technology. Not even making like this battery module and cell, but they're obviously outsourcing the cells, but even outsourcing the modules and the packs.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like they're really not thinking about fundamental chemistry improvements, and there's some pretty deep wizardry at Tesla on this front. I should say a bit about like electric vehicles or sustainable energy in general. I said it was pretty, I think, obvious to not just to me, but to a lot of people, even go back 30 years or longer, that we must have a sustainable energy solution. In fact, it's tautological. If it's not sustainable, we must at some point find an alternative to it. Mm-hmm. And so, even if there were no environmental impact to the sort of a fossil fuel economy, then we would run out of them, and then we'd have economic collapse, and civilization would fall apart. Yeah. So that was actually my initial motivation for electric vehicles. It's like, okay, we've got to have a solution that does not require mining hydrocarbons. That is sustainable in the long term. It was not actually initially from an environmental standpoint, because I had not realized the gravity of the environmental situation at that time. And I thought, actually, for sure, by now we'd have electric cars. Like,
for sure.
But
Are we back on the moon?
yeah, totally. Why are we not back on the moon?
Exactly.
It's insane.
It is insane.
If you told somebody in '69 that would not be back on the moon, and in like 2020, they'd be like, you might have gotten punched, honestly, because they'd be like, you're just, it's like so insultingly rude to the future of humanity. Because they'd be like, what is wrong with you?
Yeah, it's encouraging. SpaceX is encouraging, though.
Yeah. So it's like we should have a base on the moon. We should have sent people to Mars. None of that's occurred. We've got to make that happen. Yeah, so but on the sustainability front, it was really, like I said, not so much initially, not so much from an environmental standpoint, but from a necessity of replacing a finite resource in order to ensure that civilization could continue to grow. And then the urgency of it became much more obvious. Like, wow, we really better do something, because the environmental stuff is becoming quite serious, and the inertia of large existing companies is just hard to appreciate. They just want to keep doing the same thing, and maybe 5% different every year, maybe 5% different. Big companies hate change. So then the time that Tesla, was created, there was no one was doing electric cars. No, there weren't really startups. The big car companies weren't doing it. GM and Toyota canceled their EV programs.
Now everybody's doing it right now. Like,
and their mom.
Everybody's talking about it.
Everyone and their mom is doing it.
Yeah. And we would all like to congratulate about the Gigafactory 3.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Epic.
amazing. Yeah. And I would like to know, like, why China is the best country to build the first foreign Gigafactory.
China is the biggest consumer of cars in the world, so it's the biggest. So that alone would be enough to do it. I think also there was a lot of uncertainty about tariffs, and it's like we potentially would be unable to sell effectively in China if we did not have a factory locally.
Yes.
Or at least unable to sell at prices that weren't extremely high. Those are really the two main reasons. I think but I think there's also a third important reason that there's just so much talent and drive in China that I think it's a good place to do a lot of things. And the evidence is there in the incredible progress in the factory, which was built with very, very high quality in a very short period of time. and the cars coming out of Shanghai are already very high quality.
Oh, I can tell, and
Yeah.
the run rate is amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that they use the Chinese badge as well. It's like a symbol of pride and
Sure.
made in China. So
Yeah, it's cool. It's super cool.
How did Tesla manage to get the first wholly owned foreign car company in China?
Yeah.
I mean, a factory.
I've went to China many times, and they kept saying that we would have to do this, majority local owned venture, and I said that and we had to partner with someone. I said, we're a little late to the dance here, so who would we partner with? There's nobody left, and also we're just a little company, so we're the I kept saying we should get married, and we're a bit young.
That's a good example.
But young, and then and then also as pointing out, there's certainly Chinese companies that are going to, they're establishing factories in the U.S. I mean, there's like Faraday Future and that kind of thing, and that's 100% owned by them. And so, to be fair, it should be allowed that an American car company should be able to own its factory in China as well. And so we, talked to them for over a number of years, and they eventually said, okay, well, we'll change the law. So they changed the law. But now other companies can do it as well. So it's not just limited to Tesla.
And how much of that production hell, learnings, have really enabled? Because one of the, I don't want to bring up CapEx, but one of my favorite things is the stats in the shareholder letter. It's so much cheaper, not only faster, but it seems like you guys have learned so much from the Fremont factory, and that really enabled kind of a turbocharged build for Shanghai.
Yeah, I think the big difference is we are way less dumb than we were. So the foolishness of capital expenditures was very high, and it's less high now. And then with the Shanghai factory, we designed out all of or as much of the foolishness as we could think of that exists at Fremont and in Nevada. So we just made a lot of decisions that weren't smart, and we designed those out such the production line is much simpler. So it's much simpler and better implemented. And then we also found that in most cases the suppliers were more efficient in China as well than in the US. So but we've also managed to get a lot more output from existing equipment in the US as well. So the Model 3 body line in Fremont, for example, was only ever meant to do 5,000 cars, Model 3s a week, and it's doing 7,000.
Wow.
Nice.
So,
Wow, nice.
And it, with turning off a bunch of unnecessary things that were being done. So there was a lot of foolish things that we were doing. So and we changed some of the designs and made it easier to. It's like hundreds of little things to make it easier to build, and so being able to get 40% more output off the same line obviously makes a big difference, and while reducing the cost, the marginal cost of production, and I think improving the quality of the car. So it's all good stuff. It was the result of a ton of hard work by a lot of people. So yeah, but it was kind of necessary in that we didn't really have a place to put a second Model 3 body line. So it's like we either make this one go faster or we will not be able to achieve production. But the Model 3 body line in Shanghai is much simpler than the one in, and I say that in a good way, because it has the same end result. So if you know, but it's a much easier to understand. There's just getting rid of unnecessary movement. There's a lot of unnecessary movement in the Fremont body line, but not in Shanghai.
So you guys said in the production letter that you just started battery production in Shanghai too, and I heard that you guys were getting cells from cattle and LG Chem. Are the cells basically kind of like a commodity part that you can assemble into your battery packs there, or does it make a difference? How do you see that long term?
I believe these cells are not yet from LG. We do expect to use locally produced cells, but I don't. Just to be clear, I don't always know exactly what's going on everywhere at the 50,000 person company. So some of the things, like most of the things I say will be correct, but there may be occasionally something that's not. As to the best of my knowledge, we're not yet using LG Chem cells. We're using Panasonic cells made in Nevada.
But LG Chem can make pretty much the same cells as Panasonic?
Yes, but pretty much is not the same as same. So there's still a few bugs to work out with the LG Chem cells before we can use them in our module and battery pack production system. The CATL cells, or the CATL situation will be more of an integrated module than it will be a cell, and that's so that it's not just it's not super easy to replace these things. But yeah, we do expect to use CATL. We do expect to use LG. Currently, we're using Panasonic. When I say expect to use, I mean like literally a matter of months. So by the middle of this year, we probably be using both LG and CATL in volume.
Wow.
So we were talking about a lot of Tesla stuff, but we kind of wanted to ask you about your personal history, because you were saying how there's some misconceptions you would like to make straight. And Ashley Vance wrote a book about you. I just read May's lovely book, and it was really wonderful. I loved it and learned a little bit more history about your family and you. But what are some of the misconceptions that you would like to correct?
Most of this is just ended up being kind of water under the bridge that people didn't notice that much. I mean, there's this sort of some stories in there where it sounds like I fired people all of a sudden and arbitrarily, which was not the case. It just Ashley asked somebody who didn't know what was going on, and then that person was suddenly not there, and they didn't know why.
Yeah.
But I definitely do not fire talented people, unless there's no option. So
yeah.
And certainly not without warning. Or
I keep hearing you say "we." Like it sounds like you're always thinking of everybody. I see you as a very selfless person in your endeavors.
Thanks.
Yeah. I mean, seriously. I mean, yeah. It's like from the age of 12, it sounds like you've been thinking about how to help humanity.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not trying to be sort of like some, the sort of savior or something like that, but it's really just that if it just seems like I don't know, seems like the obvious thing to do. I can't, I'm not sure why you do anything else. We want to maximize happiness of the population and propagate into the future as far as possible and understand the nature of reality. And from that, I think everything else follows.
I saw you on Twitter, talking about how, people are having this rumor that you've been wealthy your whole life, and that would be the only reason you became successful. And you've debunked that. And can you share more about your upbringing and what led you to going to North America when you?
Sure. I was in South Africa, and it seemed like wherever there was. A lot of the advanced technology in the world was being produced in America, and Silicon Valley especially. So I wanted to be where I could sort of have an impact on technology. So that's or be involved in the creation of new technology. So that's what prompted me to go to at first Canada, because I could get citizenship in Canada through my mom, and then ultimately to the U.S. But yeah, I just left South Africa when I was 17 and landed in Montreal. I had like, I don't know, about $2,000 Canadian. So I started staying in a youth hostel for a few days, and then there was this, you could buy a ticket to go across the country for $100 and stop along the way. And so I bought that and just took a Greyhound across Canada and saw all these like little towns. Well, we were getting. I didn't have much. I had like a backpack and a suitcase of books. But the bus company Greyhound, they unloaded it in one of the cities, and then the bus left without my stuff.
Oh, that's nice.
So I literally had nothing.
All your books.
But your clothes too?
Actually, weirdly, I think I might have had the books thing, but not my clothes.
That was priorities.
All you needed.
Yeah, because I was just sitting in the bus station reading, waiting for the bus to get ready. Yeah. And I think I had the books, but no clothing.
Oh no!
So, anyway, but I managed to get to Swift Current, Saskatchewan, and then it's your cousin's son, yeah, has a wheat farm there, and I worked on the wheat farm for about 6 weeks.
Wow.
I turned 18 in Saskatchewan. It's in this town called Swift Current.
So that was summertime, right? It was June.
Yeah, June 28th.
So, because I've been there in the winter and it's like minus 40.
Yeah.
You don't want to be traveling there.
Yeah.
Did you ice skate? Did you try ice skating?
No, it was quite warm.
Okay. I mean in the winter. Did you stay for the winter?
Were you there in the winter?
No, I was there for about 6 weeks.
Oh, you're lucky you survived. That's good.
Yeah, so
It's cold there.
Literally working on the wheat farm. We did a barn raising and I cleared out the wheat bins, the grain silos, that kind of thing. And I just worked the vegetable patch, basically just doing various things.
Was your mind just thinking of what you're going to do after that?
Yeah, I was trying to figure out what I do next. Don't know what to do. So then I ended up getting back on the bus and went to Vancouver. And I had a half uncle there who was kind of in the lumber industry. He made lumber equipment.
Sounds like the Northwest.
Yeah, basically. So I ended up chainsawing logs and working on this lumber mill and cleaning out the where they boil the pulp in these crazy sort of boiler rooms.
Yeah.
Wow.
And that might be the hardest job I've had, actually, because you have to crawl through this little tunnel in a hazmat suit, and then with a shovel and then shovel this sort of steaming sand and mulch out of the boilers to clean them out.
Wow.
And you have to there was only one entrance or exit, which is like a little tunnel. If you're claustrophobic, it would be real bad. And then you shovel the sand and the mulch through the tunnel, and it would actually block the tunnel, and then somebody else would reach in and shovel it out from the other side. So just big enough, long enough that if you have a shovel with a long handle, so one person on the inside can shovel it far enough that someone on the outside can shovel it out.
Wow.
And then you have to rotate every 15 minutes to avoid getting hypothermia.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
And there's no
intense.
safeties, there's just a man looking out for you.
There's just two people kind of paired up, so if one person collapses and you go to call somebody, but it'd be really hard to drag somebody out. I have to say that it does not seem safe, because if the tunnel gets blocked, trying to unblock that tunnel would be very difficult in a short period of time. So, but it was the highest paying job at the employment office. So I was like, okay, the other jobs were $8 an hour, and this one was $18 an hour.
You had to buy your clothes, and they're all gone.
Well, they did give you a hazmat suit. So,
Oh, there you go.
Yeah,
How long did you do that job for?
4 days.
Oh, okay.
No, but then it was done.
Yeah, that's awesome.
You said it was like a short-term thing, cleaning grain bins, cleaning the
boilers.
the boiler rooms.
So what was next? We were in boiler rooms and then...
Yeah, so it's basically, I mean, literally it was like a lumberjack who's chainsawing logs and just doing lumber stuff, basically. for a few months there, and then applied for college and went to Queen's University in Kingston, and was there for a couple of years, and then somebody there suggested I should apply to UPenn, and I didn't think I'd be able to go because I was paying for my own way through university, which is actually not that hard in Canada because the tuition
System.
the tuition's highly subsidized in Canada. So with basically some, if you just sort of work during the summer and semester and take out some loans and get some scholarships, you can pretty much go to any college in Canada, I think. But I met someone who was at UPenn, and they said you should at least apply, and I applied, and they actually gave me like quite a big scholarship. So that allowed me to go there, and so then I did the physics and economics there, and then that's what led to the road trip to Stanford with Robin Wren, and then I was during that summer that I was like, okay, if I can either spend several years kind of doing a PhD not that I care about the PhD actually, but I just needed a lab. But I could either spend a bunch of years working in a lab, and maybe the technology would pan out, or maybe it wouldn't. But the internet was definitely about to go supernova in '95. So I was like, okay, look, I can always come back to working on electric cars, basically, and which I did. But the internet is not going to wait. So then I put Stanford on deferment and started Zip2, which was really just, we started off with maps and directions, yellow pages, white pages, that kind of thing. And it was, best of my knowledge, the first maps and directions on the internet. So there's still some like patents I have. I don't know how many more, but I think they've obviously lapsed at this point. But for maps and directions and yellow pages and advertising and stuff. And I wrote the whole initial code base. I wrote personally because there wasn't anybody else. It was just me. So, and I only had a few $1,000s, and then my brother joined, and he brought like $5,000, which was a lot. Yeah, at least for the first few months, there was literally only one computer. So when the website wasn't working, it was because I was compiling code. and even to get an internet connection was pretty hard. But there was an internet service provider on the floor below us. We're more or less squatted in this office. The landlord was like out of the country or something, and nobody was using it. So
you lived in there?
Yeah.
I think I read that in May's book you showered at the YMCA then, right?
That's right. Yeah.
That's smart though. I mean, you were thrifty. You did what you had to do.
We just like had no money, so what are we gonna do?
What did people think about Zip2 generally? Was it like seen as a crazy idea, or like did people even understand the internet back then?
Most people did not understand the internet. Most people didn't know. Even on Sand Hill Road, like we tried pitching people to invest in an internet company. Most of the VCs we pitched to had never used the internet.
Do you remember some of the VC firms you went to on Sand Hill?
I remember most of the time we wouldn't take a meeting, and if they did take the meeting, they were pretty bored and not said like who's made money in the internet? No one. We're like, no one. Okay. But the sea change occurred when Netscape went public.
Yeah.
So, but the first thing I tried to do was not start a company. I tried to get a job at Netscape, but they didn't reply to me.
Oh no.
Oh man.
So I tried hanging out in the lobby at Netscape. I don't know who to talk to. I was really too shy to talk to anyone. I don't know. So it's like, okay, I can't get a job at the only internet company that that does internet software. So then I'll try writing software. So that's kind of what happened there. Yeah, and then like I said, my brother came down and joined. This is like late '95, and then in January '95, I think it was there was a lot more interest in the internet stuff following the Netscape IPO, and the software was more impressive, I guess. So then more DAVIDOW invested. So they're VC firm on Sand Hill Road, and they invested, I think it was like $3 million for effectively 60% of the company.
Wow.
Which we thought was crazy. They're like, well, they're going to give us the money for nothing? They must be mad. Yeah, so this seemed like crazy that they would give so much money for a company that consisted at the time of about 5 people. Like literally, I think 5 people at the time. So, but anyway, it worked out well for them in the end. So we hired a lot more people. We built out the service, and then we also ended up writing a bunch of software to bring the newspapers online. So Knight Ridder, New York Times Company, Hearst, all became investors and customers. And at one point, Zip2 was responsible